Real Life Outdoors radio show with Nate Bailey. Everything you need to know about hunting Southern Oregon. Wake the wild within.
We just got off of another place that we had packed into. We packed 40-pound packs up into this basin that had elk in it, but Gage just wasn't feeling it. He wasn't feeling, the confidence that you need to really pursue elk in a place. And so he made the decision we should just pop out and go to another canyon that we hunt quite often. And so we did. We took off from there. It only took us about a half an hour to go across, and wormed our way back up and around and got into a spot where we normally stay, because it puts us right in proximity of about 4 or 5 different areas where herds hang out. And so we're staying in there, and we get everything together, take off, and this is opening day still. So this is still opening day 2025, August 28th or 29th. I can't remember when it opened, but it was on that weekend, on that Saturday. And normally, we're not thinking running bulls or things like that. We're just kind of like, we'll move around, we'll hunt this and see if we can turn up anything. The bulls will be all in bachelor groups, and we'll just try to sneak in. Maybe some will be, calling and rubbing, trying to get themselves ready for the rut. And so we get to the edge, and a lot of times we'll walk these edges, and we'll call down into the canyons before we commit to the canyon, and that way we get in on top of bulls. Well, we get down there. I'm a little kind of upset because there was a lot of sign from the place that we left, and we kind of drop down in. We go straight to a wallow that we know. There's like no elk sign in there. The elk really weren't even touching that wallow, and which is kind of normal. That's something that I've seen in the last few years. There was a huge tree stand that somebody built on it. It was almost like the Taj Mahal. We called it the Taj Mahal, but when I was a kid, you could go into that wallow and there'd be quite a bit of traffic through there. But after that tree stand was put in there, it seemed like that just shut everything down. And it really has never come back. We do run into some elk in there every so often, but in this canyon, there's so many little water spots that you don't have to actually go to that wallow. So I think that just kind of turned everything off, and they just go hit the other water spots. So our plan was, what we'll do now is we're going to walk down, and we'll hit one of the major springs. There's a spring that was down. It's down the canyon from us, but it's a pretty good sized one. And the last time that we were in there, we were calling bulls off of that spring. And so we thought that's a perfect idea. That's exactly what we're going to do. So we headed that direction. We started going down there, bugling our way across, and just sending out these little locator long sweeping bugles. And sure enough, one answered. And it was one of those things where it kind of took us by surprise because of how early it was in the season, and this bull is really kind of rutted up, and he had cows with him, and we're thinking, what in the world is going on? And so we continue to call on him. Gage sees him a couple times, and we get to the edge of the prairie. And one of the things that you want to do when you're elk hunting, and you got a collar, you separate the two, and you try to put the collar behind the hunter quite a ways. That way, when the elk's coming in, he's keying in on the collar, and if he doesn't know the hunter's there, then you'll try to call that bull across the hunter. And that's what we were trying to do, but we got to a spot where we couldn't cross this little prairie, and it was about 40 yards, so we had to be stuck on the other side of the prairie. And so that happened. We were stuck on that other side of the prairie, and we're sitting there, and finally Gage had the bull coming running across, and the bull must have caught him drawing, and it stopped him on the other side of the prairie, and Gage didn't have a shot. But the whole idea of getting in on elk and being a part of what you're doing in the system, it's no different than fly fishing. You have to be a part of what's going on in the outdoors. And, God made it a certain way, the way that these things work. And here's the cool thing about what we do in the outdoors is we have to submit to whatever he's done. And so we're learning that, right? We're learning something about God by learning something about elk. Elk have brains that they do stuff on their own, but at the same time, they all have a certain nature, and that's how you approach everything that you do. Same with fishing, same with, I had a couple of clients in the boat the other day, and it was super hard. The fishing was super hard. The lake never really has dropped in level and warmed up, so the fish haven't been pushed up. So the river wasn't full of fish like it normally is in August and September. And the fishing is just incredibly hard. But there were some fish in there. And I could sit there and I could see my dudes, they get to where they get antsy and want to catch a fish so bad that they fall outside of nature. And what I mean by that is humans tend to want to get into nature, and we were given the order to have dominion over it. But a lot of people think that that's the way that they look at that, or the way that they feel it, or the way that they intuitively use that is they're stepping outside of nature, when we weren't ever created that way. We were created in nature. We were created from dirt, the same dirt that this earth is made of. And the only thing that makes us different is the actual breath of God in us. So we have to come back to that. If we're going to do anything in these pursuits, in these outdoor pursuits, we have to start blending with what's going on in nature. And there's a certain rhythm to everything. And if we start stepping outside of that rhythm, we stand out like a sore thumb out there. I don't care if it's your fly on the end of a fly line. If you're stripping too fast and you're not going along with the stream flow, if you allow it to be drug across the current, if you're not, if you got a dry fly on top and you're not letting it flow like a natural fly would, you're stepping outside of nature, and the fish know it. And it's no different with elk. So when we were in on these bulls, there's a certain vibe that you're giving every time that you call, and there's a certain vibe that you're giving every time that you're walking through the woods and calling. And you gotta be a part of what's going on out there in the woods. These animals have no agendas. The fish have no agendas. They're not like they get up in the morning and think, man, I'm gonna make it to this spot. If I see a couple flies, the guy's going to have a really good presentation before I bite. That's not what they're doing. They're living, and they're living in an environment that has a rhythm, and that rhythm was created by God. And so when we start getting in rhythm with that, we're actually starting to glorify and worship the Lord. You can worship the Lord in a fly cast. It's pretty crazy when you really think about it on those ideas. That's why we created the Life Outdoors, is because we want to share that with people. We want them to be able to understand what it is to be outdoors, and what you're actually doing, and who you're actually conversing with, and when you submit to what has to be submitted to in the outdoors. That's why I think it's so much easier for people who are very good in the outdoors, who understand their place. I think that's why it's easier to explain to them Romans 1:20, that they should know who God is because of the outdoors, because they see this rhythm, and they see this order, and they see the way that things are put together, and they see the beauty of it, and they see the perfection in it, and they see all these things that the outdoors speak. And then when we start giving ourselves over to it, we become part of that. And it's such a huge deal. It's such a great place to be in life, because that's why I gravitate towards it. That's why I gravitate towards wild places, because I'm learning from concepts that are already there. There aren't any theological discussions on how an elk behaves, other than the fact that the elk is behaving a certain way at that time, and I have to submit to how that elk was created, which in turn is a theological debate. And I'm trying to qualify this into words, but it's not something that you can qualify. It's something that you have to experience, and a lot of Christ is things that are experiential. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe in theology, and I believe in studying, and I believe in the Bible. I believe in studying the Bible, but at the same time, I also believe in allowing those words to be able to be seen inside of a human person, inside of your soul, inside of your psyche, and to where there is some experiential inner things going on when you're outdoors. And I think we have a hard time, especially the more that we get goal oriented about shooting a certain size of bull or catching the biggest fish out there, or I think we lose that. And I think one of the things too is we as humans, and I've seen, this great rise of the digital age. It seemed like when I was a kid, somebody would shoot a big bull and it would get around and you would see pictures of it somewhere, but it took months. And there was one big bull, that you heard about. There were probably a lot of big bulls being shot, but one that you heard about. Nowadays, that's all that social media is after. Social media is such a place where people are showing their best, and I'm not against it, but what I'm saying is it's changing us. It makes us think that this is what we have to do to find success in the outdoors, and that's a very little part of what success is in the outdoors. That's a very small nugget of what the outdoors really mean, and I think we're losing the real idea of what the outdoors really mean. And it's funny because humans get involved in these things, and I'm not down on humanity, but I'm down on some of our ideas about, and we just, it gets propagated when we have these digital platforms where we're trying to gain followers and have people see what we do. If there's no reason you're posting anything if you're not worried about people seeing it. And so the better, bigger bull that you post is kind of a figment of the overall thing. I mean, there's big bulls everywhere on ranches and things like that, but maybe you didn't experience being in a shouting match with an elk. Maybe you just went out and it became like harvest. Taking a buffalo today compared to the way it was for a Native American pre-Manifest Destiny would have been absolutely different. And so that's what I'm saying is I started this radio show I started this segment to try to pull us back and to let us get understanding what we're really out there for. One, of course, is food. Two, I like big horns, but there's deeper meaning than that. So there's deeper meaning than just the material stuff. And when we step away from that and we start seeing the Lord working through the things that we're doing, and the submission, right? Telling yourself that you have to go up that hill. If you got to continue. And faith is believing in something that is not yet seen. It's not believing in a substance that's not there. It's just that you haven't seen it yet. And so you're practicing faith the whole time that you're pushing yourself. And so when we get back from this break, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I see going on in social media and what I see in the elk hunting world. Elk hunting world especially, because that's what's going on right now. And I'm going to try to inspire people to come back and to be immersive into what they're doing and understand what the Lord's doing through that stuff, through them. Because this stuff, you guys, is more important than even the steak on your table or the horns on your wall. It's way bigger than that, and it has eternal consequences and eternal meaning that goes through all of eternity if you treat it right. If you follow into what God's trying to use the outdoors for, and if you understand what He's using that for, it will have eternal consequences in your existence. And so when we get back, I'm going to go over just a little bit of that, but hopefully you guys are still enjoying what we're doing here at the Life Outdoors. Go check us out at thelifeoutdoors.org. We have some new stuff over there, and if you want to help support us, you can buy a hat, buy some merch, or even buy some of the products that we use, that you see us use in our everyday search. All the proceeds to that goes directly to the Life Outdoors. It doesn't go to anywhere else, but it goes to the Life Outdoors and what it does and what it's bringing to the world, what we're trying to show, like Romans 1:20. You know God because of what's out there, and so you have no excuses not to follow him. That's basically what it says. So go over there, check that out, and we will come back here
Southern
after
Oregon.
the break.
The Life Outdoors radio show on Gold Country Radio with Nate Bailey. Keep it tuned right here for more ways to perfect your craft. Coming up next, Wake the Wild Within.
This is Dave. Dave makes the tastiest burritos in town. But
nobody knows I exist. I'm serving culinary masterpieces to my mom and a raccoon named Dennis.
then came Jenny.
Dave, have you tried radio?
Radio, isn't that for traffic reports and late-night alien talk?
It's also for thousands of people who don't know you exist. Yet, radio is affordable, reliable, and it works. Not instant burrito fame, but people start showing up kind of results.
So I partnered with Gold Country Radio, and now people know I exist. I've got new customers, catering calls, and Dennis brought a possum. I think they're dating.
I told you, radio gets your business heard.
Next up, we a second table, maybe indoor seating.
Want to get your business heard? Visit goldcountryradio.org and click contact to get started. Radio, small budget, big reach, real results.
One of the things that we use up in the wilderness is this product called Rec Pack. And it is 700 calories, and it's kind of like a milkshake. And you just put water in it, and you shake it up, and then you can eat this on the go, and you don't have to stop. You can put it, it's like a water bottle. You can put a water bottle beside you, and you can drink it as you're hunting, as you're going, and you get 700 calories right there. It's full of protein, and it's good stuff for you. And going up into the mountains, we found out that, like eating a mountain house, we eat a mountain house in the evenings, but during the day, if you eat a mountain house, a lot of times you got to sit and digest that thing, or else your stomach's gurgling the whole time. Rec Pack doesn't do that. You can go check out Rec Pack. They're recpack.com, and if you go over there, check them out, and I would suggest the vanilla chai is one of my favorites. And you could go over there, and you could be moving and eating at the same time. It's recpack.com.
The Life Outdoors radio show with Nate Bailey. Everything you need to know about hunting Southern Oregon. Wake the Wild Within.
Welcome back from the break. Yeah, so we didn't get that bull. It was the first call-in, really, of the season, but we came so close, and there was so much to learn, so much beautiful things that we should step back and take a look at. And one of those things was seeing Gage fully engaged. He had his killer switch, what we call it, on, and what that means is he was locked in, focused, and started looking like a predator. He was part of what was going on. He wasn't an outside bystander just hoping that an elk might run by. He became part of the woods and became part of what was going on in the woods. And that's a huge thing, because it's hard to get that kind of to jump in. And that's part of what we're doing out in the woods. And that's part of how we are being a part of this whole grand creation that God has created. And so when that elk caught him drawing and turned and spun, yeah, it was a bit of a disappointment, but at the same time, there was so much to be learned through that. And to understand a little bit of our Creator, that, he made elk pretty wily. And if I think if it was easy, we probably wouldn't do it much, or we wouldn't have them. If during the time when the buffalo were just desecrated or just killed off, during that time, the elk probably would have been gone too if they weren't a little bit more woodsy and savvy and getting away from hunters. And I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad that we still have them. because there's so much in my lifetime that the Lord has taught through just chasing elk. There are so many times where you have to have internal struggles when you're out in the woods, where you have to make yourself do something. And that discipline of making yourself do something is something that our culture is trying to get away from. Our culture is trying it's trying to just be comfortable. And there's really nothing comfortable about elk hunting. Even when you're trying to take a nap in the woods, as good as it is, it's a good thing. But it could be aggravating as all get out. There's ants everywhere. Every 15 minutes you're getting woke up because something's crawled across your face. And it's good, but it's hard. And then another thing, we have all these different types of beds and couches and things like that, air conditioning, all the stuff to make us comfortable. And that's what we strive for in our culture. And it's good to be comfortable. I'm not gonna complain about having a hot shower, but at the same time, I think we need to put ourselves in positions where we understand something of the Lord by being uncomfortable. The Lord himself, when he walked this earth, he said he had no pillow to lay his head on. And what that means is he lived uncomfortable. He did not search out comfort. The last thing that Jesus searched out was comfort. Now, I think that great things are built off of this. And I think that's why we need this. I think that's why we need to get ourselves immersed in the outdoors. Even when we're fly fishing and we love that. The sun is hot, comfort is really not a thing. You're sweating and the sun's beating down on you. You're trying to wade through the slick bottom and all these things that we take for granted if we don't do this stuff are speaking of God. And then you have the legacies. Hunting has brought so much legacy that looking in what's going on in some of the digital world or even YouTube. I was scrolling through YouTube and looking at all the elk hunting channels that are on YouTube now. And there was a few that started it. And now it's just taken off. And it seems like, man, everybody wants to see the big bull. That's the draw. So you just look and you see the views on YouTube, and there's guys that are going out of their way to shoot these big bulls, but yet I think they're missing something. And then you have this other video. If you have never seen it, you need to see it. It's called Old Growth. And it's not necessarily about elk hunting, although it has everything to do with elk hunting. And it talks about the Fisher family. And if you haven't seen them, Born and Raised Outdoors started early going on YouTube and taking elk hunts to YouTube. And their whole philosophy is different than most of these guys. Their philosophy is show elk hunting, the way elk hunting has always been in their lives. And of course they've killed some big bulls, and that's kind of what got them notoriety. But at the same time, they've shot spikes on TV, on YouTube, and they are just as happy about all that as big bulls. But I noticed that they're one of the best elk hunting films that I've ever seen is called Old Growth, and it's about the people who elk hunt, and it is so beautifully done, and it is such a tribute to what elk hunters should be thinking about. But yet it's not collecting the views of some of these other guys that maybe are on public ground or private ground chasing big bulls that really aren't. It's them and they're trying to show off how badass they are, and it's them trying to be this cool thing. And then you have the contrast over here of a family who loves elk hunting and shows the love for elk hunting and the love for the elk woods. That they were all loggers, and they understood their part in the woods as a part that's helping manage that ecosystem and all this stuff. And then you have another guy over here that is just a visitor to the woods who is commanding and has set himself up in a way to go to I don't know, just to kill these big bulls. And we see more and more of that. We're seeing more and more of that on the digital platforms, and it's degrading what I think God is doing with the outdoors. For one, we don't get to see the ups and downs. We don't get to see the ins and outs of how hard it really is out there, and what God's really teaching us through the times that we're not around elk, through the times that we're just trying to find elk, and having to deal with your hunting buddies, because everybody starts getting tired, everybody starts getting irritable, and when you're not seeing elk, you have to understand how to be a good person. And these things aren't portrayed in these other films. All that's portrayed is killing a big bull that has a certain amount of inches, that's bigger than the last bull that they killed at a certain amount of inches, and really that is not really dealing a whole lot with Romans 1:20. It's not dealing with understanding the creation to the point of, it's actually kind of manipulating it, because they didn't go somewhere where it was natural. They went on a ranch that these elk were not allowed to have to deal with the things that elk do on public ground, and with the people, with other people there. And yeah, maybe it's more natural in some ways because they're unmolested, but at the same time, there are things that you don't learn by having everything kind of handed to you. And I think we're losing something. And I think if you look at a good quality elk hunting film, they're going to bring out all those things that God does through elk hunting to change people, or through any kind of hunting, or even fly fishing. It's the same, when you watch a fly fishing film and you see people who are staying in these great big resorts and walking the flats, coming back up and having Mai Tais, which isn't a bad deal, right? But they're not getting the same experience, and they're not experiencing God in the same way as, say, somebody who took a skiff and is camping on the beaches, going through the Keys, and having to, cook their own food, having to figure out how they're going to get to the next place, navigating and doing all that. It's just different. And I think that in our comfort type attitudes, we want to grab and gravitate onto the other side of things, and we want to have both the glory of getting these big fish or these big elk and big animals, and be comfortable, and that doesn't work, because God has that stuff put together for you to learn stuff, and you learn better out of comfort than you learn in comfort. So I guess one of the things that I'm trying to call you guys back to is, if you're listening to this, we're well into elk season. Go out and do something cool. Go pick a spot in the wilderness and get there, and use all of what you know about elk. And if you don't know much about elk, start listening to podcasts and start talking to biologists, read books, and learn. When you do that, you're learning something of God, because He's the one that created it. So you're doing some worship there. It's worship. When you want to learn something of your created world and you attribute it to God, you are actually doing worship. That's worship. And then when you use that, what you have researched, and you use that, and you go out and you hit the field with it, that is worship. You're actually believing Him. That's faith. It takes faith to hunt elk, and it takes knowledge of God to hunt elk, knowledge of what He's made, and then being able to apply that, and then going after something that is out there that you haven't seen yet. That's what faith is. And just believing when He says, hey, look, if elk like wallows, they like north-facing slopes, they like grass. If you trust me in this, you will find elk there. And that's faith. And I think we see that in a lot of different things that are being put out, but I urge you to go out and experience that on your own. Make your legs hurt. Get your lungs hurting. See how hard it is to actually get into elk country. Start learning how to love elk country. Learn the area. Learn all the stuff about elk. Learn what they do in that area. Let them teach you what kind of rhythms they're moving. Listen to how they talk to each other. Listen to how they move. And I'm not talking about how they move once you bumped them. I'm talking get among them, and try just to be around them and learn how they do things, because you're honestly learning. That's worship. That's learning something of God. And then you apply that, and that's faith. And that's trusting that what you learned of God is going to work. And these things are the things that I think draw us back into the woods. And then each time that you do something different outdoors, each species that you hunt, they're different, right? And they have different attributes, and you're learning how that works. And then they live in different habitats, which is something else that is so, it's these wild places that you know nothing about, that you learn. And if you attribute that to God, because it really is his, that's what he's done, that's what he put it there for. He wants you to be out there in it, and he wants you to understand a little bit more about him because of it. You know, when you look at the majesty of mountains, and if I don't know if you guys tried to get up in some of those high aspen bowls that are just, you know, really high, and there's a lot of elevation gain, and you're packing a lot of weight, you understand the majesty of who he is. And that's just a mountain. He's the one who made it. But when you start looking at that and you start thinking, oh man, there's so much bigger things than me in this world. Or you're underneath a starry sky that you have no real clue about. And actually not very many people do. They say that they do, but they really don't have much clue about. Has anybody ever been to the sun? No. They really don't know exactly everything that sun is. They got some good guesses, but when you look at that, it should just make you understand how small you are and how much you need to fall under the grace of the one who made all that. And especially when he tells you that you were made in his image and you're supposed to act like him. And we walked away and we tried acting like ourselves, and we tried to do everything ourselves. When we see this stuff, that speaks to that. And it's a huge thing, you guys. So that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to get you guys to look past all of what the world's putting out there and try to look into what it is to be in the outdoors and what you really are after out there. And consciously think about this, because you'll just slip into the other stuff. It's easy just to slip into this world think. But when you have to consciously do something else to get yourself outside of what's going on and start acting more immersive in what God is doing, and then make yourself understand that he is in this and he's doing something through it. So that's what we're here for. So again, if you guys want to support what we're doing here and help us get more people out, go over to thelifeoutdoors.org. That's the life outdoors with a Z on the end.org. And you can help by grabbing yourself a shirt that maybe reminds you, or a lucky hat that maybe reminds you that why you're out there. And at the same time, you're going to, all the proceeds to what
Thanks
we're
for
doing
listening to the
will go
Life
to
Outdoors
getting people
radio
to know
show.
more about God through the
Tune in
outdoors.
next Sunday evening at 7 p.m. to continue to hone the primitive skills that man has always been meant to master. Hunting, Southern Oregon. The Life Outdoors radio show with Nate Bailey. Wake the wild within.